Thank you so much for coming. Know that transportation in New York is not easy ever, but certainly not today or this week. So appreciate you braving the system to get here on time. We're going to do some brief introductions and then we'll jump right in. My name is Fischgrund. I'm the founder of FischTank PR. We're a media relations and communications firm. We're based in New York. The majority of our practice is focused on this sector. We'll call it climate, sustainability, decarbonization, renewables. We've been at it for 12 years. Very much enjoy the subject matter. We work with startups ranging to public companies and brands that have been around for a very long time. First, I also want to thank the Greentown Labs, who's our partner, FischTank PR's partner, in putting this panel on for the second consecutive year. I'm fortunate to be an advisor there. I've gotten to meet several people in the organization. One who's sitting directly to my right. Ashley, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I'm also grappling with the mic, however. Is that, oh, okay, yes, hi. Good morning, everyone. Ashley Carlson, and as Eric pointed out, I'm at Greentown Labs, so I am Chief Growth Officer there. And I think most of you probably know what Greentown is, but just in case you don't, we're the largest climate tech and energy incubator in the world. So we've hosted over 600 climate tech startups at our lab in Somerville, just a couple of hours away, and then also in Houston, where we opened our second location in 2021. And our mission is to help these startups scale and commercialize. So everything that we do is oriented around that. What infrastructure can we provide them? You know, do they need lab space, wet lab, prototyping lab, access to equipment, machinery, tools? What kind of programming do they need, you know, in order to figure out how to structure their cap table or develop their go-to-market strategy? What kinds of partnerships do they need to develop? You know, we think about folks like Microsoft, Mitsubishi Heavy Industries, Aramco, and many, many more that we can help them to pilot with and eventually to sign JDAs or to get direct investment from and much more. So that's in a nutshell what we do, but I think the best thing that I can recommend is actually to come and visit us in Somerville or in Houston. We'd love to have you.
Hey everyone, nice to be here. Thanks for braving the subway madness. I'm Kellyn Blossom. I lead policy and communications at a company called Electra. At Electra, we make clean iron, and basic theory is iron and steel making, steel is made up of 98% iron, contribute nearly 10% of the world's global carbon emissions. But we need iron and steel to make everything else that we want, all the wind turbines, all the EVs, all the appliances. So we have to go to the root problem. So that's what we're working on, and finding a way to replace coal and fossil fuels in traditional processes with chemistry and clean energy in our process. So if we figure that out and we wipe out like 10% of global carbon emissions, we can all take a break. So I'll do great.
Hey everyone, I'm Adam Offitzer. I'm head of brand and comms at Arcadia, and we're an energy data platform. We help enterprise businesses with like full end-to-end energy management, so utility bill management, energy procurement, sustainability reporting. The idea is to have a single source of truth for all your data, so you don't have to, go into all your manual spreadsheets. And I've been there for about 3.5 years. I live here in New York, and it's nice to be here. Thanks for having us, Eric.
All right, so I don't know how many panels everyone has attended, but it seems that there's been a theme in that many of them talk about the current administration and its impact on our sector. I don't want to spend too much time on that, but I do think we should dive right in with our first question. Kellyn, I'd like you to take us away. How has industry terminology and brand messaging changed in 2025?
Well, everything's great and sunny in 2025. Absolutely no difference from 2024. So, no, Eric and I were talking about this, and obviously, it's a tough time, and there's real challenges in the world. But when it comes to communicating on climate, I think that this is actually going to push us to be better communicators. In that, there's lots of topics that we don't talk about anymore, and so we have to be more specific. And Eric works with me and my team, and so he knows that I have all kinds of rules, such as my LinkedIn rule, which is my team is never allowed to use the words proud, honored, thrilled, or excited. And when you ban those words words from the lexicon, it turns out you become a better writer because you have to say things in a more creative or specific way. And so I think that that is what climate communications is going through right now. Instead of lots of hand-wavy terms about being green and sustainability, we actually have to prove our value. And I will admit, I was going through some things that I wrote last year, and like the most cringy phrases, like a greener future for a better tomorrow. What the hell does that mean? And those are words that we're just not using anymore, but it's gonna cause us to be more specific to talk about the problem that we're solving, how we're solving it, and how our solution is better using data, using metrics, instead of just saying we're green, we're sustainable, and like everything's fine. So it's a challenge, but I think it's one that's ultimately going to help us in the way that we communicate.
Yes, I totally agree. I think if anyone watches the HBO show Industry, they sort of ran into that challenge in the last season, and I think people are wary of those types of sort of vague, meaningless phrases. Arcadia's website used to say accelerating the clean energy future, which is great. We still believe in doing that. But we've been pushing ourselves to do similar exercises. That's why even in my little spiel 2 minutes ago, I said things like utility bill management, energy procurement, sustainability reporting. I'm like saying the actual thing we do rather than the one step above. We still have our high-level mission and values documented, and we still talk about them in a lot of our comms. But I think it's been a really good push to like say what it is that you do rather than try to wrap it in some fluff. And on LinkedIn, though, I still say excited and thrilled. I don't know what other words to use.
I mean, I'm excited and honored to be here. But yes, and if you look at my team's GPT, most of them are probably, how can I freaking say that we're excited to be here without using words that will make Kellyn go crazy?
There's only so many words.
There's only so many words, but I challenge you to be better. For a future tomorrow that's greener.
I think, milestones, metrics, and financing requirements, agree. I think the why still really matters. It's important to convey that message, but you need to back it up with the how, the capital requirements, and the time frame.
I agree with all of the panelists.
Come on, take a stand, disagree with us.
I have one thing that we've been trying to push the brands that we work with to do is to really talk about impact. I think that sometimes also just because everybody, not everybody, but presumably everybody in this room and a lot of the people that are in New York this week, we all understand some of the challenges and some of the nuances with respect to energy policy and decarbonization, certainly. But it's just us. I live in Pennsylvania and I'm from Pennsylvania. I went to college in central Pennsylvania, and I can tell you that my friends from there don't understand it. They just don't understand it. And so if you're able to demonstrate through words, of course, the impact, whether it's something along the lines of job creation or never having to go to a gas station, like if you're driving an EV, keeping it simple, or showing your neighbor what your energy bill looks like because you installed solar on your roof. These are obviously a little bit more consumer examples, but I think we really have to simplify our message. We have to be able to talk a little bit better about impact and not come across as, I want to say high and mighty, but that's probably a negative, but I'm just going to stick with it since it's the first thing that came to mind, although I'm not accusing anyone in this room of being high and mighty. But I do think that we need to simplify our message, and we need to be very direct about the impact that it creates for communities, individuals, and then we can worry about saving the world for tomorrow.
I mean, can we talk about EVs for a second?
Yes.
I don't know if anybody here is an EV company. All right, great.
Hands up if you do anything in EV infrastructure.
Hands up so I can
or
insult your
mobility.
industry.
Okay.
No.
All right, good.
Why have we not been talking about the best part of EVs is that you never have to go get your oil changed again? Like, we talk about the climate impact and all those things, but like, if you live in San Francisco, you can't have your catalytic converter stolen off the street, and you never have to get an oil change. These are practical things that appeal to me, and I want all of us to start selling those impacts rather than we're going to make the skies cleaner.
Exactly. Like the thing that I do drive an electric vehicle, not to be high and mighty, but one of the things when my friends ask me, like, well, is it a pain to have to charge 30 minutes versus a gas fill up, like, yeah, of course, it's a little bit of a difference, but I'm still spending way less time at gas stations because I'm charging at home. I've got a level 2. When you're able to explain those things in a way that's not condescending at all, and I know obviously that many brands have it much more complex if you're doing things like greening steelmaking, for example. It's a little bit harder to explain to people, but again, I think simplifying the message would really benefit the majority of brands in this space. I'll add one more thing. I sometimes look at a brand's description on LinkedIn or on their website, and I don't know what they do. And I work in this space. Like, it's my job to know what they do, and I can't figure it out. Anything else?
Well, you said it before, but the easiest way we've found the practical B2B angle at Arcadia is costs. I mean, it's just, there's a very clear story happening that's being reported on by a lot of great journalists who are here all throughout Climate Week about the rising costs of energy and how that's impacting, from our perspective, our audiences, businesses, and their bottom lines. So it's a really easy story to make it, again, we still believe in accelerating the clean energy future, as I said, but we also need to talk to businesses about what they're looking at. And for us, that's really been simple to make it about cost.
All right, next question. Aisling, how are brands communicating and marketing effectively to investors?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think echoing what we've just been talking about a little bit now, I think the narrative and the numbers piece need to coexist. So the why, and small side note, I actually sat down with a founder yesterday and we were looking through their deck and I was providing some feedback on their deck. And it was slide after slide of dense data. And I couldn't see anything on the slides apart from just the volume of content. And then he was talking to me about his co-founder and his background, and he's a PhD chemist. His co-founder's a PhD physicist, and they were super proud, rightly so, of what they're building and where they've come from and what they're trying to do. But not every investor is a PhD chemist or a PhD physicist, and investors don't like to feel like they don't understand what's being said. And I've sat in rooms where investors have literally looked at founders and been like, you need to simplify and make this a message that communicates your why, first of all, like what's the problem you're solving and why you, and then your P&L how, and then also, of course, incorporating like what does your tech do, how does that work, but kind of laying that foundation up front is really important. I think, again, echoing what we were saying earlier, the kind of accomplishments or like the milestones that you've hit. So what offtake agreements have you signed? What certifications have you been able to get? And how, what are your unit economics? So just communicating that up front. And then maybe this is maybe a slightly newer thing, but as startups progress up the TRL scale, it is often harder to secure funding. I'm sure everyone has been hearing about the kind of missing middle ad nauseum, but I think mechanisms like milestone-based funding that can help skittish investors to get comfortable with a phased approach to how they're releasing capital as startups hit their milestones. And then I think also just, if you are a founder raising money, know your audience. Are you talking to a CVC, a pure play financial VC? Are you talking to growth equity, debt, and making sure that you can tweak your message accordingly. And then also I think just kind of, I've seen more recently, the kind of PDF is, I don't want to say it's dead, but it's definitely not being used as much anymore. And so how can you kind of rely on the always on medium of communication? So obviously your data room, but also your Substack and your LinkedIn.
Yes, definitely your LinkedIn. I'm going to embarrass Helena, who's here. We've teamed up on our investor newsletter that we send out every quarter, and we always prefer linking to like real coverage of Arcadia partners posting about Arcadia rather than like our own blog posts or our own press releases. It's just a better look when you're driving to something that's earned, or even if it's just a partner, but someone who's willing to shout out about you with their brand's credibility. And that's gone a long way for us in our investor comms. With PDFs and decks, all I'll say is lean on your marketing teams to help. If you're in the investor world, reach out to your marketing teams. They probably know a designer or two who can help polish up the deck. And it might need some polish. You might not know, but it might. So I've seen some decks that have gone out. I've been like, we could have taken 2 hours and it would have been so much nicer. So that would be a good tip.
Adam, it's like you live in my head. And I came into my company and told them, the ideal deck, each slide has 11 words and no more. And they looked at me like I was insane. They're like, well, ours average about 300 words per slide. That's great. No, I think, when it comes to investors, as you guys said, we're in a precarious time for climate. A lot of companies in the startup phase that were relying on government funding are having really tough times. Capital is hard. Everything in the world is hard right now. And so with reporters, with investors, there's sometimes just a skepticism of like, if we're not hearing from you, something really bad is happening and you just don't want to tell us about it. So we are prioritizing just putting content out there. Hey, behind the scenes of our factory, or here's something that we're doing, because I think silence right now can be, if you have been a publicly facing company, can lead people to a lot of really negative assumptions of, okay, they're shutting down and they're just not telling us, or they haven't made any breakthroughs. So, pivoting to vertical video, all of the crazy things that people talk about, but just making sure that you're continually putting stuff out there so that people don't think that you've gone away.
You stole half of what I wanted to share as well. Thank you for that. But I absolutely agree with you. I think that frequent communication, and Adam mentioned newsletters as well. I think that's a very effective tool. My firm focuses more on the media relations and the corporate comm side, but one thing I see brands do very well when communicating with investors is actually explaining the process, because I think for a lot of companies, you're not going to have a new acquisition or a new technology milestone or new executive leadership appointed on a monthly basis. So you're naturally going to have gaps between like your corporate milestones, and I think it's important to explain like what's happening between those. Whether that's something as nuanced as what your engineering team is working on, or what events your business development team is working on, what you're hearing from a business development perspective. Many of our clients do share their investor relations tools with us because it can also provide us with some ideas possibly for media relations campaigns and messaging. And I think some of the ones that keep it just very direct, this is the progress that we've made over the last month or 3 months or what have you. It shows that you care to update on a frequent basis. You don't go silent, which is exactly what I was going to say as well, because that to me, like when you see a LinkedIn page go dormant for a few months, like someone naturally has questions, or no press release for 14 months, something along those lines. So everything you do does not have, every LinkedIn post, every media relations campaign, every press release does not have to be the biggest milestone or the most glamorous, but if it's informative and it can tell the story a little bit, I think it's an effective tool. One
thing we did earlier this year is we did a Series B round with 15 investors. If you can imagine what that communications clearance process is like, a little chaotic. But we were like, okay, we're gonna take one investor every 2 weeks and do a LinkedIn spotlight on them, on our partnership, what brought them to us. It's like easy content. The investors love it. It gives us something that we know that we're going to be able to schedule every few weeks, and it makes everybody feel happy. And so stuff like that, where you can just pre-plan, we're putting something out, people will like it, it will get engagement, works really well for us.
I was going to say, I want to kind of touch on the theme of trust building, and I'll share a story. So last week, Greentown team was in Houston for Houston Climate Week. And we were sitting around a table with a number of our corporate partners, some big CVCs, I'm sure you'd know the names. And they were talking about, as we all know, AI is just sucking up all the capital. But then in parallel, they were saying, it's really interesting, you look at the AI startups coming out of Y Combinator, and within a week, 10 days, they're closing their funding rounds. I mean, not reasonable timeframes for any investor to be able to do due diligence. Of course, that's partly because they're AI, and that is the buzzword du jour, but also because they're coming out of Y Combinator and the trust halo that can come from being associated with a Y Combinator or a Greentown Labs or a carbon to value program. So I think building trust through putting out comms yourself frequently, yes, and also how can you lean on other trusted names, other trusted brands that hopefully can also validate, help de-risk your tech, and promote what they're doing with you to accelerate that process or lighten the load for yourself.
Yeah, and just to build on that, my favorite piece of thought leadership we put out this year at Arcadia was actually not on our website, not even really on our LinkedIn. It was through MCJ's newsletter. So I've developed a good dynamic with their content lead, who's fantastic, and have made sure that we were sort of slotted into their editorial calendar. And a lot of these VCs and investors have pretty impressive brand and content offerings on their own. And if you have that trust and partnership, their Substack goes out to 25,000 people, and I'm sure that it's everyone we wanted to reach with that piece of thought leadership content, which was a byline from our CEO. So I really believe in leveraging. I think that type of comms maybe used to feel lame or stale, because it would be stodgy, but now when you've got these VCs that have their own Substacks and they're actually publishing meaty, interesting things, you could actually use it, and it's seen as legit and not just a sales pitch.
So we just talked about investors. How are brands communicating and marketing effectively to customers and partners? Adam, take us away again.
Sure, I'll take this because I report to the VP of sales, so I've gotten to know our customer and partner audience really well. Similarly to what I said about investors, we have a recurring quarterly customer newsletter, and I think it used to be not the best designed newsletter. It used to be sort of like within our product team kind of went a little bit rogue and made it themselves. And once marketing got involved, I think it actually helped a lot because we were able to, I guess I keep harping on design, but clean up the design, polish it up, give it that like marketing sheen, but still make sure that we weren't sending them the same stuff we post on our LinkedIn, because I think that's when customers and partners start to tune out. They're like, well, I saw you posted this on your LinkedIn. This is just a sales pitch. And so we really make sure that our product marketing team, our product team themselves, and our sales team to some degree is like in that review process. I think a lot of marketing teams want to silo those teams from the review process, but I've actually found it's helpful because I want sales and product to read it and make sure that it's accurate and going to be valuable to someone who's already a customer, and that they're not going to roll their eyes and just laugh it off and be like, this was clearly written by a marketer who doesn't get what we do every day. So I find ways to bring sales and product into the reviews when possible. Having a great product marketing team has really helped there.
Building on something that Adam just mentioned, but and I'm going to come at this a little bit also through a media relations perspective. One of the ways that we've seen brands communicate very effectively is by leveraging case studies and leveraging their existing customers. I have a great story from a few months ago. I'm not going to name the client, but a solar developer of ours did a large project in Western Pennsylvania with she was, I think, a fourth generation farmer and landowner. She was, I believe at one point, wearing a MAGA hat during a press conference where she was talking about all the benefits of solar. It was amazing. It was great because that is exactly what we want, is someone who's speaking about the economic benefits of, in this case, solar, of course, but renewables in general. And it became a very effective marketing tool for us, not just from a media relations perspective, but I do know that brand used it in a number of different other ways. I think anytime that you're able to storytell through existing customers or partners about value propositions, you can be very successful. I think that also trade media is sometimes overlooked, but I have some over the last 12 years, I have tons of amazing stories of a client who is featured in the New York Times one day and then in like Modern Farmer the next day. And guess where they get lead generation from? Modern Farmer. And it's because the decision makers that you're trying to reach, I'm sticking with my solar development theme here, but landowners in this case, read the article, understood how they could make better use of their land. I think that there's a tendency for really any brand you always want to get sort of the highest level of media coverage, or you really want your LinkedIn post to get 100+ likes and 20+ comments and 10,000 impressions, and all of that is great, of course. But I think also, like, if you can really focus your marketing and your business or your marketing efforts with a very targeted message for a customer, even if you're on a podcast with, that has 2,000 listeners, if those 2,000 listeners are your audience, you should prioritize that over doing some other media relations focus.
I think staying on this theme of trust and having data and using that to unlock customer relationships. So at Greentown, we run a number of accelerator programs. So these are 12-month accelerator open innovation programs that are driven by a corporate sponsor. So Vineyard Wind or Shell or Schneider Electric, for example, would come in with a particular theme or topic that they're interested in, and we would help them to fast track partnership outcomes with startups. But they actually are very successful programs. We do tend to have a lot of partnership outcomes from them. But if there isn't a partnership program, there's still a wealth of value that the startups can harness from being part of it because of the learnings that they get through the exposure to the engineers and the scientists and the commercial folks within these large corporations that they can then package up and market to a broader audience that they're either trying to build partnerships with or raise money from. So I think it's really sticking with that theme that we've heard repeated now. But how can you help to de-risk your proposition by having a track record with these big name brands that will also allow you to build a repertoire or a library of data about how your tech works, where the risk points are, and you can then harness that.
I agree with what they said.
All right. I just talked about media, so we'll get right back into it. What is the importance and the role of earned media, and what is the downside? Kellyn.
Earned media is very important. No, how about this? God bless LLMs and ChatGPT. They have saved internal communications teams who have for years been like, we need to do earned media, trying to convince your internal stakeholders earned media is important. And then LLMs come along and you tell them, that ChatGPT pulls 90% of the data that it uses to write this from earned media. And it's like, earned media is important again. And so I think it's really important. And I love using ChatGPT, Claude, pick your poison, for these reasons, because it's so helpful in distilling what is out there. And so on a regular basis, I will put in there, how does our company compare to the competitor? It will give you the analysis based on what they're seeing on earned media. And then you can adjust and say, oh, it's not differentiating this thing that I think is really different between our competitor. For our next earned media hit, I really want us to focus on this. Or it's giving a lot of credence to these things that other people are saying and whatnot. So I love it. Earned media has never been more important, particularly as we move to this AI-generated world. So do more of it and do it more often.
Yeah, I sort of referenced this before when I was talking about our investor letters, but that is what gives us the most credibility, is when we actually can point to a story. And people in this industry know the trade publications are really niche in a good way, and they get the story right. So we actually had a really confusing story that we needed to tell. candidly, in January when we launched the suite of solutions I mentioned for enterprise businesses, because it was a bit of a pivot from our core data platform business. And it was just like a nuanced story to tell about, well, we used to have this platform, but it wasn't fully self-serve, and now we have these solutions that businesses can come to, and we're a bit of a consultancy, and like, it took a lot of explaining, and we went to Latitude. I don't know if Latitude folks are here, but they nailed it. Like they, and this has happened a few times, and maybe it just means I'm bad at my job, but where the reporter has told the story better than we do as a marketing team, and you're like, oh, nice. So I really think going to some of these trades and also building the relationships that our CEO, Kieran, has a great relationship with a lot of the reporters at these pubs, Canary, Latitude, Heat Map, and beyond. And I think it helps to keep them in the loop and like understand where our story is headed so that they can tell it naturally when the moment arrives.
Ashley?
I don't know anything about earned media.
But you know it's important.
Where do you... Oh, what's earned media? Oh, editorial, so not paid. So if you go on a podcast for free or get interviewed by Heat Map, Latitude, Canary, Washington Post, Forbes, something that is media coverage that is based off the strength of your company or your insights, and not on how much you paid the editorial or the sponsorship team.
That your communications team earned with their hard work.
There you go. That's the right answer. Where do you get your news, Ashley? I'm just curious. And then I'll move on down the line. Where does it's tough. I find it difficult working in the space, receiving newsletters from every media outlet to determine like what do I trust? What do I actually go to? So I've tried to winnow it down. I'm curious what you read.
Well, I lived in London for many years, so I continue to read The Guardian almost daily. On the climate side, though, my climate journey is awesome. I just love what they're doing, and the people there are great too. I really like the Energy Gang. I really like, what else do I listen to or read? I really like, why is it going out of my head? I can't remember the name of it. I need to look at my phone and look at all the things I subscribe to. There's so many. There's actually, when I scroll through, I'm always like, oh my gosh, there's so much to catch up on. I listen to The Daily every single day. And then there's just the kind of things that so in our internal Slack at Greentown, we're so good at posting what is going on. We have team members that just do it. They just share news about our startups, about our corporate partners, about regulatory changes, and I actually use our internal Slack as a source of learning all the time. Oh, and the other one that I subscribe to that I really recommend is Azim Azar's Exponential View.
I'm a newsletter girl. Like the first 20 minutes of every morning is just reading all of my newsletters. I don't have time to read a whole article, but I have definitely time to read 2 bullets on something. I love Axios Generate, although it has a new name this week. I'm behind. I love that one. And I love podcasts for like deep dives on topics. Everything in energy and clean tech world is so complicated. And so my team is very used to, getting a Monday morning of like, hi, listen to this 15 minutes of this podcast if you want to understand the rec credit market. And like, they explain it better than I ever will. So I love doing those. And then, I'm trying to, institute policies internally instead of just sharing articles, which everybody loves to do on their internal Slack all day. Is if you're going to share an article, you have to show that you read it and show why it's important. Of like, hey, here's this article about our competitor. Note that they said this about off days. Or here's this article about something interesting is doing. Like, this is the key sentence. In case not everybody has time to read everything, and to make the why it matters and why you should read this point very clear.
Love that. I should do that. Sometimes I share the links in the Slack, and I definitely don't read them, but I know
Headline is so good.
I know that the writer or the publication means it's well written. Speaking of which, I'm a journalism major at heart still, so actually just very important to me. So I actually think like if you're in this space and you have social media and you use it and you don't follow the reporters themselves on the platforms and the publications who are kind of struggling because, as I mentioned, it's a niche space and like there's just not a lot of eyeballs on climate and energy coverage right now outside of people who come to events like this. So that's like my pitch to, not to suck up to the journalists and the publications, but like follow them and support them. I think it goes a long way. And my big three I mentioned are Canary, Latitude, and Heat Map. I just think they do amazing work and have done a lot in like a short amount of time to be like the credible voices in the space. And then I love Axios Generate, like you mentioned. I think Semaphores climate coverage has been pretty good. And then obviously subscribe to the Times Climate Forward. Although I've found they're so macro that like from a business perspective, it's not, I don't think the place where we're like looking to for coverage as often as I would like, frankly, because I'd love the Times to write about Arcadia. But they're really viewing it from like 10,000 feet. So yeah, those are the good ones. And I'll also plug Ayanna Elizabeth Johnson's podcast because she comes from the science world, the activist world, but like also does bring in the business angle. And I think like that's a pretty unique thing that she's good at without boring her audience and people who are not as into that part of it. So really, really admire her work.
The other one that wasn't mentioned is CTVC, which is also great.
Oh yeah.
Great news. That was CTVC, if anyone's not subscribed to that.
What does it stand for, Eric?
Climate Tech Venture Capital.
That's right. That's right.
I don't know the difference. Yeah.
I would have had the venture capital, and I wasn't sure about the first T,
Yeah.
the only T.
They're keeping climate tech alive.
Yeah,
as
it's
a
a
phrase.
climate venture capital. One thing I'll say for media, it was early in the year, data center activity picked up very quickly, and my team saw it just because of the number of brands that we work with. And this sort of ties into the first question about industry terminology. I still didn't anticipate how data centers were going to dominate the conversation the way they do, now 8 months later. So I think for any brand, like you can't read everything. You can't subscribe to everything. You'll drive yourself nuts, or you'll just read all day, be really smart, and get no work done. I think that understanding what the market is saying is incredibly important. It doesn't necessarily mean you have to adapt your business model or pivot or anything along those lines. But I do think it makes people's, their pitches, whether it's to investors, customers, or partners, sharper. And that's certainly something that we're seeing now with, clients really across the spectrum, from grid edge utility solutions to renewables developers, is that they're trying to capitalize on the data center boom, which is tied to the word du jour, as Ashley put it, artificial intelligence. And so I think a good number of brands got well ahead of that and positioned themselves to capitalize on it.
Eric, I have one more, tangent, but a pitch for like media diet. I mentioned social media before. Give Blue Sky a shot. Twitter/X is not as easy of a place to get your news and information. It's just not. There's a lot of spam now that there didn't used to be when you scroll through, politics aside. Like it's just a clunkier experience. LinkedIn's good to follow news organizations. Instagram and Threads really are not. So like try out Blue Sky. A lot of climate people are there posting regularly. People who used to be influential on Twitter. That's where a lot of the conversation is headed. And if you're not there, I'd recommend like giving it a shot.
I will say be the contrarian. Don't just go to Blue Sky, go to True Social. See what the other people are saying. Like, don't be surrounded by climate people. You got to understand what the real challenges are. Be on Twitter.
I'm scared to give Truth Social my data.
Yeah, I'm not going to vouch for your mental health if you do, but I love, for my personal reading, I love Canary, I love Latitude, I love Heat Map, but I think it's also really important to make sure that we're getting out of those safe climate spaces. They do incredible reporting. They're amazing outlets. But also watch CNBC and see kind of how things are being framed outside our bubble.
Yeah, that's a great point. I have, for that reason, I'm not as active on Twitter, but I've stayed there to like scan and see the differences in the conversation. It's actually been really helpful. I lurk.
I'll friend you on True Social.
Okay, see you there.
See you there. Last thing I want to add to media, I think a wonderful amplification tool, if people aren't doing it in the room already, Reddit. I was not a like a true believer in Reddit. I thought it was for people that are younger than me, and it probably is. But I can tell you that many of the clients I work with have seen some of their articles, whether it's a trade publication, a podcast, or a top tier media coverage, or I've seen blog posts shared on Reddit that end up with tens of thousands of views, tons of engagement, plenty of referral site traffic. These are like very tangible outcomes. So I'm not saying hire a digital media person to launch your Reddit program right away, and I do think that companies should do it above the line and not in a promotional way. But it is certainly a platform that reaches a ton of people who are not reading climate media. Adam, are events like the one we're attending now, where people fly in from over the world, and then ones like I was at 2 weeks ago, RE+, do they still have as much value now that budgets are presumably being reduced as people focus their business plans better?
I love Climate Week. I'm so glad we're all here. What an amazing event. Give it up for Climate Week. But from like a pure marketing and sales, I said I report to the VP of sales, so I really have to put my sales hat on now. So if I told the journalism major of like 15 years ago that, he'd be disappointed in me. But no, like Climate Week is not, it's great for awareness and reputation. But with limited budgets, is my perspective, and the sort of candid take is our go-to-market team would much rather go to smaller niche trade shows, and they do, and they have success there, than put a significant amount of budget into a presence at Climate Week, just because it's so sprawling. I mean, think about like all the events you're not at. Thanks for being here, by the way, but like, there's so many things happening this week. It's hard to keep up. Like as a brand marketer, I wish we had a massive budget, because I would love to do like the Arcadia house and like put on a huge event and invite all of the publications and journalists and speakers I mentioned and like make a big name for ourselves here. But because, like you said, there's industry headwinds and budgets are limited, like the hot take, it's not even a hot take, the sort of like truthful answer is we're more focused on having a booth at a trade show that much less people have heard of in a city not like New York. And that's where we focused our budgets, and hopefully we'll have the momentum to like put together a big brand presence at Climate Week in future years. RE+, we do have a big presence, and I sort of want to call out the nuance, like, I know it's a big event, but it is more niche or industry specific, and that's why we've stayed committed to that from a brand perspective, and we had a big booth there. So, but I still think it's an amazing event, and I love meeting people here. That's my favorite part of it. I think that's what it's most valuable for.
Adam still wants to be invited to all of your Climate Week events.
Yes, I'll take the open bar at any happy hours.
No, I'm with you. We're in the era of like prove your value on everything. And you have to make sure that it's worth it. Most of our team is back in Colorado, like doing the real work and talking to customers and whatnot. I will say, just because I love disagreeing, there's something beautiful about in-person connection. I live in Washington, D.C. I've been in a number of policy events, and like people that live like 5 blocks from me that I never talk to have had like wonderful, meaningful, helpful conversations that are moving the ball forward here. And so in a world where we're like all behind our laptops in our own home offices every day, there is something nice about getting new insights from being in person, but it's also really hard to justify when budgets are tight for big presences, for sponsorships, for that type of thing.
I think New York Climate Week, at least for me anyway, is kind of unique in how much energy and how many people descend on the city, but also just how expensive it is. I mean, I was looking at hotels and I was like, oh my gosh, like $800 for a motel in Queens per night, and it's, and so you do, then when you start to think, well, what's the ROI, then that's tough to reconcile sometimes. I think for us though, we have so many startups that are working on so many diverse problems within the climate umbrella that coming here this week where there are so many different kinds of corporations, different industry sectors, different investors, is great exposure for them. And we can use the Greentown name to help congregate all of those folks in a room so that they can talk to our startups that are working on like low carbon cement, alternative meat proteins, green steel, really, really, really diverse things. I think small events, intimate events are probably where we tend to have conversations that result in partnership outcomes faster. And I think about, it's not a small event actually, but Sarah Week in Houston is a really, really valuable event because it's just a concentration of people in a space, really great people in one space. But then other events like, just an event we were at 2 weeks ago in Boston, Tech Decarb Invest, 200 people, really intimate, that you get to meet everybody over the course of the 2 days that you're in the room, and they also are just brilliant people that you want to spend time with. So I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think if I had to say yes or no to New York Climate Week in particular, I would say yes, because it's also just incredibly uplifting. You come away and you're like, wow, like I feel so inspired to keep giving my job 110%.
Yeah, I want to totally agree.
Walk it back.
I took the question very literally about the marketing and sales budget. But as the quality of event, I mark it in my calendar every year. I get so excited. I see people here who I've met here, I've made great connections with, and that is invaluable. So it's an amazing event, and I was just being very literal about the budget piece.
No, that's why I asked. You manage a.
But I'm thankful it happens.
Right. But it is a real question, right? Because Ashley and I caught up briefly yesterday at Greentown Labs event. And I was sharing an anecdote of a company that I know well that last year at RE Plus had an enormous booth, great location, probably 30 to 40 employees, and this year they just didn't attend, and like that was it was a clear sign to me, not even necessarily about the company's health, but just about how they were prioritizing their business and what they were focusing on. I'm professional services. Everything's a little bit different. New York is our backyard, and I'm biased because we are hosting this event. But I do think you have to put the work in ahead of time. I think that there are, everyone has probably attended events where you have it built up and you think that there might be 20 or 30 people coming, or you might think that there's hundreds of people coming and it ends up being 20 or 30, and things do happen, of course. But you really have to put in the effort into marketing these things. And for those of you who are maybe on the startup side and have to manage yourself, you have to make sure you have time cut out to do those things. There's a lot of logistics. And then for the larger brands, individuals in the room that are hopefully fortunate to have someone like Adam or Kellyn, it's a big ask for marketers or for communications and event management people to be able to put it together, make sure it's marketed effectively, registration, all of these things. So I guess my summary from being sort of an outsider to watching brands do it is, if you're going to do it, you really have to invest the time and do it right.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but I'll share a story from last night, actually. So Greentown were invited to attend a very swanky event uptown hosted by GE Vernova. And the group CEO of GE Vernova was in the room. And it was a small room. It was a room about this size, so not a ton of people, with a really very senior and important person for a lot of our startups to get to know. And I think the thing that stood out to me is I was talking to one of our entrepreneurs, and we were kind of looking around the room, and he was bowled over by just the kind of seniority of folks. And I was like, look, that's Scott Strazik, the CEO of GE Vernova over there. Like, you have to go and say hi. And he's like, oh, but he's not going to want to talk to me. He's not going to want to talk to me. And I was like, go, like, push him, go and talk to him. And so he did. And I guess the moral of the story is, and I think everybody knows this already, is if you do make it into that room with the very important person, go and talk to them. Like, don't let them get away, because even if it's just a 2-minute exchange, it's the start. And so if you were thinking about that ROI and the story that you can tell, then like make sure you seize the moment.
I like that, seize the moment.
Yeah.
We all have to do that. All right, our last question here, and we can go down the road here. What are your biggest MarComm tips for 2026? Or insights if you don't want to give a tip?
Gosh, at risk of kind of sounding boring and repeating myself, I think data and being able to sort of really show the metrics and the milestones around what you have achieved, but also the sort of near to medium term goals that you've set yourself, so that it's not this kind of lofty pie in the sky. We're not back in the frothy heydays of 2021 of funding, but actually we can measure and track, and we know how to do that.
Yeah, I would say be specific, but then also be kind. Like, it's a tough time. Like, we are all muddling our way through this new world. And so, how can you help others in the community lift them up? Like, I'm always talking about all of the other companies I'm obsessed with. I'm in green steel. I'm obsessed with the green cement companies. They're so cool. You should go talk to them. There's other companies that I work with in Colorado, industrial heat pumps and steam boilers at Masuro. Check them out. Like, how can we use our platforms to not only get our own message across, but help all of the other companies out there, give them tips, give them advice, give them lessons learned, so that we will make it through this period.
Love that. I have one easy, actionable tip for all marketers. And I promise I'm not being paid by these people. They don't even know me. But read MKT1 newsletter. It's just so good. I like I mentioned too many times, I studied journalism. I didn't study marketing years ago. I've gotten a crash course in marketing over 15 years. And MKT1 has given me templates, frameworks, foundations, and especially as someone who comes from the brand and comms side, it's given me a growth marketing understanding. When we talk about the ROI pieces, there's so many, countless KPIs and metrics you could tie yourself to. And they've actually given me the frameworks to come up with the ones that are going to mean the most to our team internally. So it's just a really good, there's so much fluff out there in the newsletter and inspiration space that I really want to shout out how good that newsletter is.
I like that. We've talked a lot about marketing to customers, partners, and investors. I think sometimes brands can oversee or fail to market to their own people. Sometimes your employees and your colleagues they're the best way to amplify your work. Some of the brands that we work with, I feel have really nailed this. When they've hit a major milestone or a new customer or a new project, whatever it is, you see it on LinkedIn for 2 straight days, because everybody from the project manager to the accountant to the CFO to the CEO to the business development marketing team, people are posting, and it's not the canned, what is it? We are so excited to announce.
Thrilled, honored, excited.
Right. You're right. Exactly. Insert your buzzword. Everyone is writing it in their own way, and you can tell that they're really invested in the company. And I think that really your people can be some of your best advocates, especially when you're sending them out to the world, whether it's trade shows or Climate Week, or whether it's highly regional events. You really the people on your team, they can spread your message sometimes better than you can, and in a more authentic way. So that's something that I think a lot of brands are doing well and probably investing a little bit more time on. I know some groups, if you have a Slack or Teams internally, will share milestone or media placement or a podcast that the CEO or something is on, and try to generate a little bit more visibility internally, which helps a lot externally. Anything else before we see if this room has any questions?
I totally agree. We call it buy the cupcakes. Whenever something good happens, buy the cupcakes. Have the same celebration. Get everybody excited. It's always worth it.
Especially in I don't want to say uncertain times, because I've heard that word 1 million times already in the last few days. But there's headwinds in this space. It's nice to see progress. We should be celebrating what other companies are doing, and we should certainly be celebrating what our own companies are doing. So we're in this together. We can advocate for one another. Questions? Do we have a mic? I think we'll be able to hear. He barely beat you, Georgina.
Wait, right. Also, just to add to the list of really good reading material, it's heated and the action thing. That's us anger too. We write that. I'm Tristan. I'm a filmmaker, and one of the things, also in comms, and one of the things we didn't touch on when we talked about how we're changing the way we're communicating on behalf of these companies, is this slightly uncomfortable pivot towards talking more about defense and the ability for these technologies to be used in war. For example, some of the cement companies, lower carbon cement companies like Greentown Energy start talking about materials they can produce for war time. What's you guys' take as communicators when you're talking to companies that have gone from talking about saving the world to blowing the world? Do you reserve judgment on those things and just tell them what they want to hear, or do you apply like a moral kind of, how do you navigate that moral?
Blowing people up is probably not what I wouldn't put on the website. Look, companies have to do what they have to do to survive right now. I know a thin film photovoltaic brand that is rebranded themselves completely for defense purposes, and it's working. So I understand that. I'm not saying that brands need to capitulate to like what some of these external or federal forces like are looking for or what they want to say, but they also have a responsibility to their employees and their product and their investors to continue to move their technology forward. So I think if it's done tastefully and not, if I call FischTank a climate media relations firm and then tomorrow a defense media relations firm, like I don't think that's tasteful. It's different, professional services. But I think if it's done, in a way that's tasteful and also like pretty direct towards what your product application is, then I'm all for it.
So it's a really hard question. There's no Archimedean viewpoint, and then when you start to layer on morals, it obviously gets very subjective very quickly. I think, there are a lot of climate technologies that they have applications in defense. I think the framing of blowing people up is obviously an extreme. And that's that's why it's a tough question, is when it is made provocative. But I think a lot of entrepreneurs that we work with are really mission driven, and they want their technology to have the decarbonization impacts that is kind of their internal beating heart motivator. But they're also realists. They know that they need to close capital. They know that they need to validate their technology. They need to de-risk it, and so they approach this in a very pragmatic way. I don't know if I'm answering your question, but I think that there is a pragmatist approach that has to be taken.
I would just say, we're in a moment where it's a very different moment that we were in Climate Week last year, and it's probably a very different moment that we're going to be in Climate Week in 3 years. And so I view my duty is to build a brand that is true to our values, that communicates very clearly what we do, and can withstand all of the different moments because we're focused on our core mission of doing what we're supposed to do.
I agree with Kellyn.
Good. Georgina? Oh, we'll go next.
I want to circle back on some comments made about LinkedIn and Substack. And I'm just wondering, I've been seeing some LinkedIn articles that people have been sharing more recently. I'd be interested to hear, what do you think is most effective in terms of getting reach engagements? And if you're going to do a blog, do you do it in the LinkedIn article? Do you do it on the website? Do you do it on the Substack? What are your thoughts on this?
I have some takes on this, and thanks for the question. So two things. One is I think most people, or a lot of people already do this, but if not, especially in the B2B space, I view LinkedIn as like the actual homepage of Arcadia. I just think that's like how a lot of our buyers, prospects, customers even interact with us. So what you said about the About Us on LinkedIn, I was like, oh shit, like we probably need to update that. So that's one thing, the maintenance of the in terms of reaching people with thought leadership, if you are lucky, like I am, to work with someone like Kieran, who is just going to go ahead and write 5 paragraphs on whatever policy the administration passes, like that's, I think, the most effective way to build a thought leadership reputation is someone who's actually writing it themselves. Maybe there's a marketing person who like tweaks one word, but for the most part, if they're being true to their voice, they're posting. And we've tried the article format, and the one cool thing about it was like having some stats about the reach that were a little bit more granular than what happens when you just post it to your feed. But I think more people see it, engage with it, share it when it's just straight up posted as a normal post. So we've leaned more into Kieran posting, our VP of product posting, our VP of sales posting when they're going to a conference, and then just straight up reposting that from the brand account, because I think people don't really want to like comment on or engage with the brand as it, as a brand. They don't know who the social media manager is. They don't know what they're really getting themselves into. They maybe hope the founder sees it. But if you retweet, I still use the term retweet, but if you repost on LinkedIn from the people who are the faces of your company that are going to the events that have their takes, that's how we've built the most organic visibility and reach. Proving ROI on that, and like proving that Kieran's post led to a sale. If anyone has figured that out, please let me know. I think that's impossible. There's like very little way to do that.
Yeah, I always say don't confuse engagement or reach with effectiveness. Yeah. For us, LinkedIn has 3 core audiences: investors, customers, potential employees for talent recruitment. You can post a lot of provocative things on LinkedIn and get a lot of people to comment and reach out them. But if you're not focused on one of those audiences, like I don't care if random people are having hot takes on our career fair. If I'm not reaching those audiences, then it's not worth it to me.
Just adding to, I think, the theme with that answer, I think just LinkedIn especially, you have to be authentic. I've given this anecdote a million times, but one of the best LinkedIn users out there I see is an engineer with a residential energy storage company. And this guy grills, drinks a beer, and talks about like the most nuanced stuff for 5 minutes in his clips and gets an insane amount of views. And I know that does very good business coming out of it. So whether you're hosting content on Substack or on your website, as long as it's authentic, like Kieran's posts, which Adam referenced, and then just like the small stuff is you got to deal with the LinkedIn algorithm, right? Like most people know now, like a link post is not effective as a photo post. So you post the photo and then the link in the copy and publish it, and that's going to appear higher in the algorithm. So you do have to sometimes play the game a little bit, but authenticity is everything.
I think somebody mentioned earlier, there's all the LinkedIn algorithm tips. The engagement in the first 30 minutes matters more than the rest of the day. So what we do, we put a LinkedIn post, we send it out on Teams, we say, everybody go and like it, it's gonna help. It's the little stuff like that you have to do, but it works.
Awesome, thank you. This panel was awesome. Thank you so much. Love the topic, love the comments, especially in this moment. So thank you for partnering with us on this. Thank you. Question. Interested in your thoughts on Greentown's marketing and comms. What do you love? What can we do better? What can we do differently?
Are you looking to hire a PR firm? I guess Ashley can't answer that one first. I'm too biased. I'm in the Greentown Slack as well as an advisor. I think the greatest asset that Greentown has is its member companies. I love when you share posts, and whether it's videos of teams or of the products, and I think you do a really good job of, instead of necessarily promoting Greentown, promoting the member companies. That seems to be very effective to me. I really don't have nothing comes to mind. Maybe you guys need a podcast.
I appreciated Ashling's pitch to check out the space, because I actually got a tour of the Somerville location, and that was just really cool to see so many startups and founders, what I viewed at the time as like a climate-only WeWork. That was my perception walking through as an outsider. And I just thought that was really effective. So I feel like, the credibility is there from my perspective. I'm biased too, but it was fun to tour the space. Latitude actually gave me the tour I mentioned. They're based there, Latitude Media.
I don't have any specific feedback, but I will say one thing that I love using right now is the LLMs. I'll put in a bunch of our stuff and say, roast our LinkedIn page. And sometimes it's brutal, but then I'm like, oh, you know what? They were right. That was cringy as hell. Or like put our writing in. And I love having it roast things, because it makes me realize like what my blind spots are and how it's coming across to other people, and being able to get basically instant user feedback from Claude or ChatGPT is awesome.
I don't have any more tips. I'm curious, I guess now I'm asking you a question. Everybody knows, I shouldn't say everybody, most people know Greentown Labs in climate circles. Is there a specific initiative in trying to educate people that are outside, even if it's in ancillary technologies, like we just talked about, defense, cybersecurity, how far does Greentown step outside of this industry?
The motivation behind the question is that we're in a moment, right? Greentown is a very powerful brand, and we are asking ourselves the question of how we can use that in this moment, and what are the new, different, and creative ways that we can leverage that. So that's kind of the motivation behind the question. And it's helpful to kind of get the perspective of folks who are in our community who are so that we can bring folks along the journey with us.
Cool.
And I'm sitting next to my head of philanthropy, so just fundraising. We're not
Any other questions? We have right behind you. Hey, Tom.
Okay, so I run an executive search firm, and marketing's always really tough for us, because 90% of the time we're under NDA, you can't really talk about the losses who work for funds and their portfolios. So we always find it really hard to be able to tell an interesting story through marketing. We can't talk about it. So that's always been a challenge for us, and content we end up always scratching it or potentially talk about, and recycling other people's news. So, I guess professional services firms generally, you've got any advice on how we can be a bit more interesting and engaging without going into detail about what we've actually done. We don't want to talk about nice items.
As a professional services business owner, obviously I understand the position. You can't talk too much about what you do for your clients. You don't want to give away secret sauce or tell too much about their business impact. I also don't know enough about your sector. I can tell you, for what works, a little bit about us is, despite what I'm doing right now, we rarely promote FischTank, except the occasional award and sometimes new hires and things. But we really we promote our clients. And I think that people get an understanding of the company that we keep with our clients, whether it's through following our LinkedIn page, or we have a newsletter that goes out not nearly often enough, which I made a note about some of our client work, and with the hopes, of course, that people who receive that would understand a little bit more about us. That's my first instinct. That's what works, I think, for FischTank to some degree. I don't know if anyone else has anything to add. We're probably going to need to spend like an hour on that one. Yeah, yeah.
Thanks for your time.
Sure. Rob, I'm making you go over here.
I can talk about it.
Oh yeah, that's good.
I'm curious as to everyone's take on attracting either long-term or short-term, how you go about attracting very ambitious customers. So a startup trying to get to a Unilever or something like that. You guys talk about very briefly how you might recommend, or how you guys do recommend, or what you do to do that kind of stuff.
Do absolutely everything that you can possibly think of and don't give up. Obviously, scan your LinkedIn, see who is connected to who that you can tap for a warm introduction. Send cold emails. Think about what they're doing that is going to be eye-catching when you reach out to them, such that you can hook them in with something relevant that is currently top of mind to them. Go to events and corner people at panels and ask for their business cards. I mean, all of this, it sounds like I'm pretty intense, but I think obviously you do it politely and you try to be relevant, but I think you might get a no. You might get a no from one person, but it's not a no for all of Unilever. It's a no for that one person. So figure out who the next person is, and then the next person, because these organizations are huge and they often work in silos. And so you might not be relevant today for that team, but you might be relevant tomorrow for another team. And so just trying to get in front of them and have a compelling story to tell about why what you're doing is relevant. Don't give up.
Yeah, I would say I work our investors hard. Like when you invest in our company, I'm going to have asks for you all day. One, they respect that because it shows them that you're trying to leverage your network and hustling. But like the VCs that we work with, somebody at that VC knows somebody at Unilever. And so being very specific, I want to meet with this person. Do you know this person? Does somebody at your firm know this person? Does somebody in your personal network? And just using them, like they're supposed to be there to help you, so make them help you.
Yep, I don't have anything to add. Partners, investors, existing customers. That's the only way I know how to do that kind of stuff.
Leverage the network, works for me. I think we got time for one more. Rob, unless you want to yell. Oh, sorry, you just gave the microphone to someone. We got two more, don't worry.
Okay, thank you so much. Hi, my name is Laura. Thank you so much for all your questions and practical tips so far. So I work for a company based in London. And we're currently actively going to market in the US. We've already been working with some really big partners like Bank of America, Allianz, and such. We want to be, we're obviously not based here and not sensitive to the current situation. We want to be sensitive to the political climate that's going on, but we don't know to what extent are there words we avoid, or how do people here, approach that type of conversations when you're drafting these comms or positioning, approaching customers. Do you touch on that topic, or do you have any practical tips on what to do, what to steer away from? Thank you.
That's a great question. I have somewhere on the FischTank website like a 2,000-word manifesto on how to enter the U.S. market, although it's probably a year and a half old now. I can't, practical advice is tough without knowing the industry specifics, of course. I think really focusing on who you, laser focused on who your audience is, whether that's recruiting customers, partners, or investors, and then work backwards from that. Because it's difficult for any brand to launch, period, but I think for an established brand that's then moving to the US, if I got that right, or expanding into the US, you have a very clean slate, which is a good problem to have, but also how you handle that launch is going to be what people find when they search your brand for presumably the next 6 to 12 months, just because that's how Google and all the generative AI search platforms work. So I would, don't be too excited, don't be too thrilled to enter the U.S. market, of course, as proud as Kellyn would say. I think if you can talk specifically as to the impact that you've had overseas and how you're hoping to have that impact in the U.S., the impact that would have on customers in the market, that you'll be successful. don't just try and go in with like a very broad catch-all, press release and media relations program and attend every conference, because you might just spread yourself too thin and not come away with the ROI you're looking for.
One more quick take is the political topics are sensitive. I've leaned on, I can't think of a better term than, they're basically like lobbying organizations, but like business consortiums, like groups that we're a part of that so many other businesses are a part of, that what they say can't possibly be that controversial. And I've used them to actually, they have people that we're connected with, we're part of them. I'll just name a few so I'm not being vague. Clean Energy for America, Rewiring America, Rocky Mountain Institute. These are businesses that have found, they're in the tricky business of like, for a while, electrification was kind of the hot way to talk about this. I think that's faded a little bit, sadly. But energy abundance, finding ways to talk about these in ways that resonate with a wide range of people. And those organizations, among others, that's where I turn to for guidance and make sure that, like, again, if we're reposting them, tagging them, we're part of a massive group of businesses that are all represented by or members of these organizations. So there's sort of like a united front, even if I'm not on their monthly planning meetings. So.
And if you're looking for a place to land, check out Greentown Labs.
Oh yeah.
Greentownlabs.com, is that right? All right. All right, last question, and I really appreciate everyone hanging around this long.
Yeah, sure. Sorry, 2 layers. Actually, I just go with one question. Because we don't have a lot of time. I'm a founder of a company that manufactures carbon negative concrete. Well, we're young, we're still growing. I know you might have received this question multiple times on other occasions, but the one thing that I want to know is, at what stage do I hire talent, either internal or external, to basically achieve MarComm goals? Asking this question because we kind of find ourselves in that position where so far we've grown through the network, B2B, but now we're doing a lot of outbound sales and so realizing importance of marketing communications now. So yeah, it's a big line item as I can see on the books. So I want to know practical insights on how do we prepare for this.
I've not done it myself, but the newsletter I mentioned before, MKT1, they literally have over 1,000 words about how to make your first marketing hire and like which type of marketing or comms professional to bring in based on where you're at as an organization. So that would be one resource I'd recommend, but maybe Greentown has some, that's pretty, maybe they don't.
I don't, unfortunately, but I'm looking at our marketing and comms director in front of me.
Oh, yeah.
I don't know if she has anything to say, but.
Yeah, I think there are various stages for a startup, right? So first is going to be the CEO, where you're at, and who can you So at Greentown,
Thank you.
at Greentown, we do go through really regularly to offer marketing advice, whether anyone can give you a press release template, big email of a local report or anything like that. Then your next stage will probably be outsourcing some. So working with someone like a FischTank, where you're able to fully hire in-house. So I would say probably a third of our startups are the first stage where the CEO is doing it. The next stage is going to outsource, and then eventually we're able to hire. But of course, it's CEOs have to balance a lot of things, and budget really goes so far. So think about what your main marketing goals are and where you need the most help, and that you figure out which of those three buckets to fall into. That's
Good answer.
Teamwork.
Yeah, great job. Thanks, Rena. Okay, all right, well, thank you all so much. Really appreciate people hanging so long.
Thank you.
Thank you to the panelists. And I hope the rest of Climate Week is filled with lots of ROI for you.